Hello. Welcome to our first monthly Grant Blow Up Class Pass. I will jump right in the slide so that way your time is being well spent. So we are going to share our handy dandy Canvas slides, which will be available along with the replay. So I am Lori Love Crawford, your favorite grant mentor. And today for our first session, we are going to be talking about something that I call the Liferary. So right now in this space, we are in the Liferary Lab. We're going to be exploring how to leverage what you've lived through to guide your grant writing experience. So, through this year-long series, we're going to be dreaming the way forward. By the end of the year, if you are following along, whether live or on the replays, you're going to be able to shift your grant writing prowess. You're going to understand more about the funding landscape. You're going to feel more comfortable with the collaborations that make grant writing and grant funding and grant projects more successful. And also, you're going to bolster and increase your rejection resiliency, right? Because in the whole structure of grants and how they're created, there are a lot of no's. And that is primarily because each funder has a certain amount of funds. They have stakeholders that tell them what to look for, what to pass on. So the first few no's definitely feel personal. And also, when we're able to zoom out and see the larger grant ecosystem, it's a factor that exists, and it's something that we get to take less personal because we're better able to understand that it's not a rejection of us. This doesn't serve the very exact purpose that the funders are looking to do. And so that just means it wasn't the right fit for right now, and we get to move past that and submit our next applications and get those yeses in. We're going to start our time with grant funding safety guidelines, which sounds so funny because why would we need to talk about safety guidelines in a grant writing training? Because there are a lot of scams. Let's just be honest. There's probably two more that just were added to the internet right now while I'm talking. Because so many things will be passed off or labeled as grants to be very predatory. So, an actual legitimate grant will never ask for personal information like your social security number, your date of birth, with a little asterisk, unless it's just confirming you're an adult, right? But bank details, especially the combination of those prior to receiving any funds. Now, if you apply for a grant and you're awarded a grant, then they ask for you to fill out direct deposit information or your mailing address for a check. Like that's all okay and fine. But before you even submit an application, if a website is asking you for these details, I would hard pass on that. There should not be any talk about interest rates or terms because that would be a loan. That is not a grant. Grants are not something that should be paid back. So if you see information saying that you're required to repay, then that is not a grant. With the asterisk understanding that grants have certain terms and conditions. So if you apply for a studio gallery event and instead you spent money on getting your car fixed and you could not then fill out your grant report and you couldn't show the receipts of how you spent your grant funding, you can be asked to repay those funds because they were not used as specified. So that's why there's the asterisk there. And also, a legitimate, worthwhile grant will not demand uncompensated work. If you see something that says, like prepare a full scope of, a 10-piece exhibit or, a full curriculum for a certain topic, and you're putting in tens of hundred, hours into that, and then they'll quote decide. That's major red flags. That's just one, not an ethical model for them to be using. And it also could be someone who's trying to just take the work of someone else and use it for themselves. So if there's uncompensated work that they're asking for ahead of time that goes beyond the usual submit work sample, something like that, I would put the brakes on that and use your best discernment because grant safety is real out here, y'all. Okay, so what is a library? A library is this intentionally curated collection of your lived experience. Why having a library is so important is that it helps you live life on your own terms, leverage those lessons learned, and lean into the tell me more about yourself types of exchanges in life. This library will also be one of the most efficient ways that you can start to ideate what your grant projects are, get more details to include in your grant applications, and start to see where these networks and personal opportunities in your most immediate sphere are possible, and then also being able to have an efficient way to filter through the more virtual opportunities you might be hearing of. So I like to think of the library as a way that you get to see yourself on your own terms in your own way. So yes, you might have had some naysayers or, haters saying some things about you. Those things don't have to be included in your library. You're able to put those, the bonfire bin, right? And like get rid of them. They don't have to have a place here. So we are going to go through the who, what, where, when, why house to create your library. And again, in this with the replay, there will be a Google document you can make a copy of for your notes if you would like to do this in real time while you're listening. And why we're using that who, what, where, when, why, how framework is because it's something familiar. It's something that you've heard of. It's something that lets you, again, build on your lived experience of knowing that those are different prompt type questions. So that way this feels more accessible. So starting with who. You can pause this. You can just pick one question at a time. You can approach this however you'd like. But the questions that are correlated with who are, and these are just the sample questions. If you find yourself wandering and meandering in your thoughts and note somewhere else, honor that. This is just to get the conversation started because this is a 1 hour little nugget of time. And I would recommend setting a timer for 3 to 5 minutes for each of these if you're watching the replay. So that way you are not getting stuck in this hole of I have to get everything out right away. You can always return and revisit these prompts, but that way you are getting some thoughts initially out on paper or screen. So that way it is not blank when you go back and you want to be using this library model to be able to find your next grant opportunity, to decide what projects are the highest priority right now, and to be fielding through different collaboration and engagement opportunities. So let's get to who. Who has impacted your life the most? Who repeatedly comes to you for support? Do you know or see who do you know or see that inspires you to create? And who do you want to help inspire, serve, or impact? These questions are going to start populating out, not because the who is not just about the actual people. You'll start to see some of the activities, some of the skills that you have, some of the things that are meaningful that you actually want to do and replicate, right? And so these types of patterns we're going to be looking at throughout all of these prompts. Next, we're looking at what. What have you experienced? What do you know a lot about? What have you done that you'd like to do again? What are you skilled at? What do you daydream about? And what do you give the most shits about? Okay. Where have you been that was meaningful? Where do you never want to go again? Right? I'm a firm believer that knowing what you don't want is just as helpful and empowering as knowing what you do want. Where do you wish to visit? Where can people find out more about you and your work? This question's here mostly because some people forget they have whole portfolios. They may not realize they have multiple websites. They may have physical pieces like books that they've written. They might have art pieces in certain places. So this particular question is a little sneak tip here is to help you actually realize that you're probably under crediting yourself for how many things you already have out in the world that you've created or put time on. Maybe it's just a matter of recirculating those and leveraging those in your grant writing opportunities. And also, where can you lead people towards? So, is this something where you have an initiative and you want people to be coming along with you? Is this something, do you have a physical event that you want people to be coming to? Is there a podcast that you want to get funded? Are you creating a music album, right? Like, what is all of this for? And getting at any and all the ideas for all of these questions are going to help sort of see the weight of different ideas, which ones have the most substance to them already. And little tip, those will be the ones we end up prioritizing first. When? When did meaningful moments happen? So you can do this over the span of your life. You can think chronologically. You can think of what comes front of mind. When were you at your best and brightest based on your own standards, right? So when you think, you know what, this was like my season in life, there's elements of this that I'd like to get back to, whether it's in my practice, in my relationships, just in my personal well-being. get those ideas and details out. When is your energy the most consistent during the year? This is such an important question, at least for me and how I function, because of the seasonal saddies that I get. I'm not going to be planning very large projects. I'm looking for funding for something that lasts or asks for a lot of hours and consistent energy for me during the winter months. That is not a consistent time in my life. So I know that about myself. So I get to leverage that and then not have larger odds set up against me because I put them on myself, right? And then also, when are your upcoming events, life moments, or projects, right? Do you already have something that's sort of in the pipeline and you want funding for that? Are you realizing that you have certain things coming up that could be a complementary, or maybe that you could, once they complete, you could wrap up and use as examples of your work in other applications, right? Really, again, populating out all of the possibilities in one place in your library. Why? Why do what you do? Why should others look to you for insight or inspiration? Why does the world need your creations? Why have you in the past, or might you in the future, stop your creative pursuits? And I'll pause on that last question because grants can mean that we're hearing no a lot. It can be a deterrent at times. And so it's so helpful to have the self-awareness, realizing, oh, I have paused my creative practice in the past when I've heard no, or when, like in my example, if it's very cold and wintry and I'm not going to have a lot of energy naturally. If I were to set this huge task in front of myself, that's going to be a time where it's very difficult, right? Again, knowing your seasons and cycles, but also, knowing that if you're trying to plan a whole convention or summit by yourself, you're likely to not be able to finish that because it's too big of a project by yourself. So then you might be able to see, oh, partnering there might help, right? So these why questions are not only to help you fill out your library, but also, little hint, hint, these why questions are very often the types of questions that are in grant applications. So if you already have some thoughts in your library for this, you're not starting that section of your grant applications with a blank screen. You're able to draw information, bring that into, your other working document where you're physically doing the writing, and then you're able to get to it. I always think that a screen with some ideas is much more approachable and friendly than a blank screen. All right, and how? You're getting through this so efficiently. So, how? How have you made it to where you are in life? How many people or organizations have you or your work reached? How do others speak about you to your face? Remember, we don't care about people saying behind our back. That's their business and their issue. But how do people come up to us? How do people thank us for our work? Thank us for being their friend, their peer, right? There's so much information we can sort of data mine out of those exchanges. So that's why we include them in our library. How do you want others to feel after engaging with your work? How do you see the world differently? And how do you see your ideal world? So those last two questions are really for you to acknowledge that you are going to have a unique perspective because of your whole lived experience and what you've now completed in your library. And no one else can have that exact perspective, that exact layering as you do. And also, you're building towards something else and someone might be. So, by having an idea of what your ideal world includes and what you're building towards, you're able to not only see how near or far that might feel, you're able to access for opportunities that get you to move along that metric closer to where you'd like to go. And also, you're able to, again, see when those best fit funding opportunities or partnerships come up because you're able to see that you have similar objectives that you're working towards. All right, so we're going to put this all together. So, by leveraging that library, you're going to be able to, again, guide your grant writing efforts. You're not going to be starting from blank space. You're going to be informed by what is the most relevant to you and your lived experience and what you're moving towards and building towards in the future. So we're going to go with the 3 N's. It just worked out that way for the purpose of this training. So once you've completed answers to all of the prompts that you want to answer, right? We're going to go back through, and some people might want to do this with highlighter, whether, analog or digital. You might have your own sort of symbol system that you use to take notes however you want, but you're going to notice themes, patterns, boundaries, right? What seems possible in your current life season, right? You're going to go back through and say, oh, there's themes. A lot of my work has to do, and my experience has to do with public health or patterns. Oh, I see that I really love working in small groups of 2 or 3 people. Those have been the most meaningful experiences. Or boundaries. You know what? I really love being behind the camera or behind, the scenes, curating what others are doing or seeing, but I don't want to be center stage. Or also, in my case, knowing that, warmer months are going to be when I have more energy. And if things require me to travel or to exert energy for several hours a day, oh, okay, I noticed that. So then, let's say I'm reviewing a potential RFP, request for proposals, I'm able to say, oh, the time frame of this project is January and February. That's not going to be the best fit for me if there's no flexibility on that timeline, and I can't at least bump it to like March or April, right? So like I would be able to know that about myself when I'm going through this project. So next you're going to name. You're going to start naming, and with those patterns you're seeing, I'm putting ideas together. So, oh, this particular project that I did, I do want to do that again. I could scale it. I could host it in a different location, right? Let's see, again, putting a name, like labeling out what is the pattern I'm seeing, what are the themes that I'm seeing. Are there potential partners that you're going to see? Again, putting words to it, actually extracting it out as an idea. Go ahead with the people, places, or things of interest that you're noticing. Again, this could be not just potential partners or projects, but also modalities or mediums that you want to learn more about, or other people's work that you could be approaching them and asking if they have any opportunities, or you could even ask if they have any funded projects and whether you could, review them and to see what criteria they submitted. How did that process go, right? By putting names to what you're seeing in your life, Bria, you're able to start to discern and see again, as I mentioned earlier, the weight of things. What feels like it's more likely to be a possible next step, and which opportunities are going to take much like you have to crank your gears faster to get more traction to move forward. That can also help with that prioritization of what you want to focus on right now. And then for navigating, so again, this is about now starting to take action on these initial first steps of what you're seeing might be your next or best option for your grant applications and projects that you're pursuing. So, where has an interest in what you've noticed? So, what this means in so many different ways, but and one of the things is if you've noticed, let's say again, that a lot of your projects have to do with public health, where has an interest in public health? It could literally be health departments. It could be community libraries, community groups, local schools, art institutions specific to your medium that might have an advocacy component, right? So you're starting to look around for the institutions, the organizations, the collaborative entities, so to speak, the funders who also work either within that genre or that field of work or with a similar medium or that have that actual impact, like who they're reaching is who you want to reach, which is that next part, right? So where are your dream people or places? Are most of your people going to physical events? So you could start postering and flyering and putting flyers out. Are people in online spaces? Who funds those online spaces? Right. So let's say you really like a local theater near you. You can ask them, do you have any funders? What organizations support you? They may have funding. They may be that institution might be your next funder. You can look to see if they have RFPs, right? This is the process of being able to start to locate where you might find your next or your first grant opportunities at. Again, you can think of this as where provide similar services as you want to provide. And where are your local resources? Where are you going if you need information? Is it the library? Is it a small business group? Is it an artist guild? All of those places, if they don't particularly offer funding themselves, they might have sponsorships. They might have co-op structures where you're able to put so much of an investment in and then maybe receive access to use tools for free or materials for free. right, starting to populate out what all opportunities are in your local vicinity. So that way, or even virtual vicinity as well, but that way you're able to take that next step to not only identify grant opportunities, but also to start to crystallize the projects that you want to be getting the grant funding for. Because the more time that you have getting the details or the vision out for what you want to apply for funding for, the easier it will be to discern which funding opportunities are worth applying for and to complete your application because you've already spent time before, again, you're looking at their terms and conditions, which already puts pressure on your brain, right? You have this library already created and you have these next steps under your notice, name, and navigate. um, it's almost like I think of it as like you're condensing back into soup, right? You're getting things into tangible form. And so that is the end of our training for today. So if you would like to work together on Substack, the free subscription allows you to get the replays, right? They're there so that way you just literally have to be subscribed so you get the email notification that replays are up. And then at least 2 articles a month that either talk about certain techniques or upcoming funding opportunities or challenges that I'm seeing with clients, right? So I'll be able to get that information. But for right now, that's been as far as I can, determine the most accessible but best way to house the replay somewhere. But that way, there's a level of opting in. So that way, if in future calls, if you're sharing any information that you don't want the whole world to know, right? It's not as easily identifiable or anything like just being listed on YouTube, right? So that is the first option. And so everyone who, from being on this guest list, you will be added to the free Substack so you can access the replay. If you would like to upgrade to paid for $11 a month or $100 a year, you will not only have the replays, but you'll also have weekly Q&A access. So your own specific grant questions answered each week. And then you'll have the opportunity each month to submit and for a grant audit, which is essentially like if you have a certain sub question on a grant or something and you just want a set of eyes on there or feedback or you want help interpreting the question, right? You'll be able to submit each month like one of those forms. So that way you can get that audit support. If you were like, I'm ready, I have my idea, I have grant opportunity, I just need the structure to physically help write it. I have the Grant Globe Guided Planner. There is the print edition, so you would order online, it would literally be delivered to you printed and bound. And then also there is the digital like PDF version. So if you want like immediate download, you want to be able to go ahead and print your own copies or just use it digitally. Both are the same price just for ease, decision making, right? So you either already want it printed. I will say the one difference is that in the print edition, there are 16 project sections, so it's 200 pages. Because you're meant to work through it as a planner, like a workbook. And then just because of the file size and for, uploading and downloading and making it sure it doesn't crash your computer or anything, the digital edition is 50 pages because instead of having the project pages repeated 16 times, it's once. But again, you can be copying and printing them however that you do want. The one caveat for the planner, whichever form that you would get, is that all rights reserved, so you're not using that or redistributing as your own material. We are adults here and you understand those things. Terms and conditions, see apply, right? And then what I'm most excited about is our upcoming Grant Glow Up beta. So I have been teaching grant writing to creatives, artists, and entrepreneurs for the past 7 years. And most of that has been in person physically. But we are starting our first, and I also have a digital course, right? That was self-paced. But now we're doing our beta, which is our 6-week group program. It starts March 2nd and goes through April 10th. So that is for drafting and submitting your next grant application without downplaying your vision. The number one thing that I see artists and creatives doing is being like, oh yeah, I sort of have this thing. And then that's their application. No, you're gonna stand with your shoulders back and your chest out. And we're going to be getting into the luscious details of exactly what makes your project, your vision, opportunities so grantable. And so instead of the idea of watering yourself out of your mission, we're going to be like so concentrating and like souping up your applications because what you have to offer is so needed and it's so unique to you. So we're going to make sure that all of that is what's being conveyed in your grant, your applications. And the important sort of part that we're trialing out to see how it works in the beta is the community aspect, right? Because the most important part about sustaining your grant approach to your creative pursuits and your charitable pursuits, whether you're coming at this as a nonprofit or an individual, an artist, a change maker, right? Is that being in community means that you have support going through the no's. You have someone to champion you going through the yeses. You don't have to spend as much time looking for opportunities because when you're part of that community, someone might say, oh, this isn't relevant for me, but here it is for you. All right. And it also allows those collaborations to come through to see, oh, it makes a lot of sense for us to do this together, or oh, I can learn from what you've done. Right. So why the sort of beta part of it is we're seeing how this all works virtually. So we're essentially combining the in-person experience and cohorts that I've done for years with the online self-paced course, having it be, as I punched the microphone accidentally, having it be a community and program beta together. So that is $150, which is like, it will not be that low of a price again because it's a beta. So I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible. That's $25 a week, essentially, right? There are two pay options, so I can pay the $150 in full or two monthly payments of $75. You could go to www.theinnerparent.com/grant-glow-up-beta, right? And this will also again be linked in the replay and all of that. But at that link, you can learn more. You can see exactly what the modules and topics are that we're going through each week. If you like to see, more tangible things. But also if you're like, I just know that right now is the time that I need to prioritize and take grant funding more seriously to support myself, my vision, and those I'm here to serve. I would absolutely love to have you. So thank you. And I will leave you with a semi-cheesy quote that my thumbs thought of today. The future is built by the hearts and hands of those who dare to believe in the power of their dreams. Right? So thank you for tuning in for this replay, and I will see you next month on March 19th at 7 p.m. If you have any questions, again, you can reach out at hello@loricrawford.me and also reply in the replay section on Substack. Thank you, and now you get my music. Do 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 as we're exiting and hitting stop. Have a razzle dazzle day, and if that's not accessible, put F on front and have a frazzle dazzle day. Thank you. Okay, and we're done.